And so when I really locked into that, I was like, okay, we're going to let go of all of my stupid beliefs about myself. And I'm going to show up and make people feel freaking amazing. And when people feel that way, it's astounding what they're capable of. So if you started looking at your business and said, where am I focusing so much on my lack and what I think I'm not doing and where I think I'm lacking as a, leader, as someone online, as an influencer, as whatever. And if I could really lean into how am I making other people feel when they contact me or when they come to my page? Like, am I making them believe it's possible? Am I just so energetically magnetic that people are like, oh my God, like I want what she's having?
Welcome to the Next Level Life podcast with Christine Corcoran. This podcast is made for the powerhouse businesswomen who are ready to ignite their fullest potential. This is where we will dive deep into the mindset breakthroughs and sprinkle in some kick up the butt motivation so you can scale your business with confidence and clarity. Whether you're craving more income, impact, or inspiration, this podcast will be your ultimate resource for all things next level. Listen in as we have authentic conversations with game-changing female entrepreneurs as we reveal the secrets of what it takes to rise and thrive. So go ahead, ignite your inner fire, and let's get you taking massive aligned action. Are you ready to elevate? Let's go. Before we dive into one of my most exciting podcast interviews ever, I'm so honestly so blessed, so lucky, and just so excited that I get to chat with Lori Harder. Before I do that, I want to share with you an exciting thing that's coming up in February. If you are on the path to earning six figures within your business and you really want to make sure that 2025 is the year that you surpass the six-figure mark, then I have something to support you in creating that success. It is called my six-figure leap. It's a 3-day challenge to set you up to hit six figures this year. It's designed for service-based entrepreneurs ready to create consistent income in your business without needing to create any more new programs or add to your workload. I doubled my revenue in 12 months, not by working harder, but by refining my strategy, maximizing the value of my current offers, and adopting a six-figure mindset. And you can do this too. I went from 50K a year to 124K a year in just 12 months using simple sales strategies that I'm going to teach you in this 3-day challenge. So if this is on your path this year and you would love the support to level up and do this in a way that's authentic to you and not using any icky, sleazy, or yucky sales tactics, then register for the six-figure leap. You can find the link in the show notes. Today on the podcast, I have the incredible honor of chatting with my beautiful mentor, Lori Harder. Lori Harder is a serial entrepreneur and is an incredible woman who has not only a top-rating podcast, Earn Your Happy, which I've listened to right from the beginning, right through to incredible masterminds. She's spoken on stages, run incredible events called A Tribe Called Bliss, also a best-selling author of A Tribe Called Bliss, her book, and her newest venture, Glow C, which is a skin routine that you can drink, which is an incredible product I've been utilizing ever since I got my hands on it last year. And it is a skin routine you can drink, a beauty daily supplement that you can take, which is hydrating your skin and also a beautiful gut enhancer. So today on the podcast, we talk all about vulnerability and authenticity, how she has developed an audience, how she's always continuously growing her audience, how she's really worked on developing her network to support the growth and the expansion of her businesses, and how they've navigated that through masterminds, through running events, and taking the time to really connect and develop really strong relationships. We talk all about taking scary action, having incredible discipline, and challenging yourself to get in the rooms of successful people to expand you. I absolutely loved our conversation and I cannot wait for you to listen to it as well. Let me introduce you to the beautiful Lori Harder. Today is I'm just absolutely blown away with this opportunity to be able to get to chat to my beautiful mentor, Lori Harder. Thank you so much for being here on the podcast with me today.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. After listening to your podcast right from the beginning, I feel like I've either listened to it right from the beginning or I remember being like maybe 6 months in and then going back and listening to the first bunch of episodes right from the beginning.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's a long time. That was like 2016.
Yeah. I've honestly, before I started my business, I was already listening to Earn Your Happy and have just loved every episode that you put out. And I love how much intention that you put into your episodes. And I feel like they land for me every single time in such a unique way that I'm like, how did she know I needed to hear this today?
It's because I needed it. Yeah. and we're all the same. That's why.
So for me to be able to get to chat to you and have you on my podcast today is an absolute dream. So thank you so much for being here. And let's just start there. Let's talk a little bit about Earn Your Happy. How do you keep it so authentic? How do you keep it so just continuously great content week in, week out?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think the first thing is to say it doesn't feel like great content week in and week out. And I think that's really important for people to hear because the content that you don't think is good, as long as it's truly authentic to your life and things you're experiencing, it's going to be good to someone else because it's going to resonate with just like what you said, how did they know that I needed to hear that week? And maybe that was a week where I'm like, oh my God, I'm not feeling very inspiring. Maybe I'll just share that because I have nothing else to say. And it's like, maybe it hit you exactly where you were because you felt the same way. And so it was inspiring, even though it started from not feeling that way. And so I think that realizing that majority of the things that we do, we're not going to think are good. I was just talking about this with someone who I feel like has great content all of the time. And we both felt like one out of every 10 or 20 things we do is like actually good.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you shared that because honestly, I feel like we always feel like that all the time. I think I recorded a podcast
Mm,
episode to go out next week and the other day, and was literally sitting there last night going, I think I'm going to re-record that. It wasn't my
mm,
best. So,
mhm.
like, how do you stay authentic as well? Like, I feel like there's this element of authenticity that you bring to the podcast where you allow yourself to share your experience. But do you have any insights around like how you go about doing that, or how has it just been a journey from the beginning?
It has definitely been a journey. I feel like one thing about me is that I do lean a little more authentic, but I learned meaning that comes a little more naturally to me, I think, than some other people. I haven't struggled with a really big perfectionist bug. Like I didn't fully understand it until I married my husband and I was like, "Oh, that's what that looks like." Like he really struggled hard with it. So for me, I always viewed kind of sharing where you're at as a superpower. So I've had to learn how to share more and share more, even deeper, like even more authentic to me, because there's still parts of me that I don't feel I'm fully being authentic, in sharing. But I also think there are some things that we have to decide that are sacred for us that we're not going to share. And I think that's okay too. But it's definitely been a journey. I think that in the beginning, instead of just like, oh, it's so hard for me to be authentic, I think the hard part for me was I felt so awkward talking into a microphone. And it was less about me worrying about being authentic. And it was more like, do I have anything valuable to say? So my struggle was I've got nothing valuable to say. And so what I learned is that talking to exactly where you're at is one of the most powerful things that you can do for people. Even if you just woke up on your podcast and shared that, all of the things that you struggled with and all of the negative things that you thought that day and how you overcame it. And I've learned that that is like the most powerful stuff we can share with people is the human experience, but not just like, oh, I was kind of having a hard day. No, exactly what were you thinking when you woke up? Was it like, wow, I'm dreading my to-do list. I don't know what my purpose is. I, don't even know really why I'm here. I'm waking up every day at 2 a.m. or every morning at 2 a.m. wondering if I'm ever going to do that thing that I want to do. And what is life going to even mean if I don't do it? And I have anxiety and I don't love who I am. And maybe I don't feel like I have friends and I feel lonely and disconnected. Like all of the things we actually feel in a day, I feel like that is where all of our power is. Because when we share that too, we also, it's like that thing loses its power once it's shared. And the minute someone says, me too, it dissipates. And so my podcast has been a major experience of therapy for me, talking into a microphone, sharing where I'm at, and then getting DMs of people saying, me too. And then learning more and more that the more that I share those very human experiences, the more I don't feel alone in them.
My goodness, so much to explore there. I feel like for me, it's very much, I'm still in that. I'm still in that
Yeah.
space of like, how do I even explore and share in a way that feels authentic to me, but without like, I think there's always that fear of like, but what if I say the wrong thing? Or like, I'm running a business here. Like, it's important to be
Mm.
professional. Like, there's elements there. And it's funny because as you were sharing, like, I thought back to an episode that I did a while back. And it was an authentic, vulnerable share about like everything that was happening and how I was super overwhelmed with all the moving house and traveling and all the bits and pieces. And one of my past clients reached out to me and she's like, "Oh, it's so nice to hear that you don't have your shit together."
Isn't
And I was like, oh my
that
God,
true?
am I portraying that I always have my shit together? And that was a real wake up call for me too. But it's so challenging to be like, okay, how do I sit down and actually share the realness of what's going on without, like, I think there's always that fear. Like, how do you overcome that fear of like, but what if I say the wrong thing or if it affects my business?
Okay, so this is so interesting though, because I want to go back to what you said, like always having your shit together. And it's funny because in the past I used to share so much authentically. Like I would like all of my posts were like with no makeup on and in my bathrobe, and like I used to do these bathrobe lives when Facebook Live first came out, and it was like actually a really big way that I built my audience in the very beginning, or maybe more in the middle, but a way that I really built it, and also how I filled something, an event that I had called the Bliss Project. A lot of it was filled through these daily Facebook Lives, Monday through Friday. I committed to doing a Facebook Live, and I did it in the morning in my bathrobe while I drank coffee for a reason. It's because I was not getting online because I thought that I had to be perfect before I could turn my camera on, because it was very much a time of like glam and perfection and highly edited videos by people. And I was like, number one, I'm never going to do that because I just don't have time for that. And number two, if I feel like I have to be that way in order to do it, then I'm never going to be doing this and I'm never going to grow my business. And so I was like, screw it. I'm giving myself a challenge. I'm going to go every single day on Facebook and do these lives. And it's going to force me to figure out what I'm going to talk about, because again, the little voice in my head always said, you're not smart enough and you don't have anything valuable to say. So the only way to overcome that is to take action and to do it, and to figure it out and to learn. And yes, the first few, the first 10, the first 20, 30, whatever, they weren't great. Like I stumbled a lot through them. My heart would pound, like race, anxiety beforehand, during, all the way through. And I was like, you have to just keep showing up and experiencing this and doing it. And so, one of the things that I've learned to be really good at is to find like little tips and tricks and hacks to get me through things. And so no one's getting through these things without learning what those are. And so for me, something that I found is I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy those quote decks. Do you remember how popular those were for a while? It was just like
Yeah.
quotes from your favorite author or manifestation decks, things like that. And I bought a bunch of those, and I was like, okay, I'm going to draw 5 of these quotes, or maybe it was just 2 of these quotes during this Facebook Live. And I'm just going to talk about each one and how it's affecting my day. So I'd be like, hey guys, I'm just going to kind of draw some quotes from this. And, how are you? Put it in the chat box. I want to know what you're up to today. What's going on? Just say hello to everyone when it started. And then I'd be like, okay, this is one of my from my favorite authors. I always pull these different cards. Today I pulled these 3 quotes, and I'm just going to kind of talk about what I thought of them in accordance to my life and how they affect and have impacted me. And so my goal was to try to stay on for about 15 minutes. And so if I ran out of things to say in 5, I kept drawing more quotes during that time. And what it did is it taught me how to be able to talk about anything. And it taught me like how to kind of fill these awkward silences that can happen on stage. It taught me how to kind of keep going, even if there were trolls that popped up online while you're doing this. It taught me so incredibly much that I would never take that experience back. So I think one of the biggest things as you're seeing me tell this story is that I have been practicing in so many different ways to be comfortable on a microphone, talking to people, and also having the realization that, just by pulling those 3 to 5 quotes every single day, that became valuable to people. So I think it reframed my perception of what value was and how to keep something interesting on a podcast and how other people perceive all of this information. So for me, it was practice and feedback. Practice and feedback. And there's nothing like a live chat box on that, Facebook Live that gives you feedback. And so I got to really learn what resonates and what hits for people. And that is what informed me. So that's the only way to do it, is to go through the pain and do it every day. And I think to actually create challenges. I was listening to a podcast this morning, and it was between Lewis Howes and Alex Hermosi. And it was an amazing podcast. And Alex was talking about, how do you get good at something? How do you make it successful? And he's like, if you look at your content and what you've all put out over the past like 30 days, he's like, now if you took that and you did it all in one day, you're going to get a lot more successful a lot quicker because you're going to get a lot of data back. You're going to get a lot more practice. And it's like such a no brainer to me because I'm kind of like always struggling with, not struggling, but well, yeah, I guess struggling. How do I get my company Glossy out there even more? And even all of Chris and I's stuff. And it's like, well, how much content have I done in the past 30 days? And can I compress that? Can I get more learnings for me to get better at the content? And so that's our life now is how do we get better at content? Well, you do a whole lot more content and you try to learn from the data and you just keep going.
Mm. So good. Completely agree with you. And I think what I heard from there is like this element of like really learning to value different things because I think in the online space, and I think AI is like taking it now to a whole new level, is like the authenticity is so important, but you're learning to actually value rather than just like educational content and or like regurgitating stuff that we've already heard, like all the things, because it's really, we don't really have many original thoughts anymore. But like your the piece of the authenticity that you're valuing your experience and your stories, and that's what people are valuing. And I think that people sometimes have it flipped, right? They're like, oh no, I've got to give value, which is like educational content, rather than it actually be
Mm.
just my experience of like how I experience this.
That is okay. This is such a good realization because I realized this unfortunately much later in my career than I wish I would have. I felt very much like I was always comparing myself to other people. We're very much attracted to who we're not. Does that make sense? Like if we're more of a creative person who's like, very flowy. Sometimes we look at people who are linear and very concise and can really teach on certain things like very well, or, maybe they're more of a teacher than a storyteller. And sometimes that can like, we can want to be that even more. Like we can desire to be that instead of who we are. And so instead of me embracing the fact that I am a straight up like, I'm life experience and stories. Like I really struggle with being a teacher, which actually, Christine, that's like one of the reasons I love listening to you speak is I believe you're such a linear, beautiful, concise teacher. And it doesn't mean you can't be a storyteller, but it also means that you're a really amazing teacher. And that could be something that you could really embrace. But for me, when I look at that, I used to want to be that and do that. And it was like, no matter how much I tried to be someone like you, I just feel all clunky. It wouldn't feel right. It wouldn't feel authentic. And it would feel so hard, like an uphill battle. I couldn't come back to it. I just like would get so burnt out because it wasn't coming naturally. And I think that when we have to create so much and do so much, in our businesses, that we really have to figure out who we are and what works well. And even it's not going to be like, oh, wow, I crushed that. That's amazing. But it's kind of like, where are you gravitating towards? And for me, I'm so good at taking my life experiences and finding the lessons in them and then sharing that and like trying to get more into the story. And I really had to practice that and get even better at it. But I think if you can start to think about which one you are more, then you can really lean into learning that even more and getting better at it. And again, it's not that I don't ever mix teaching in there because I absolutely do and can have some great frameworks. But what I do is I make the framework much less of a focal point and the stories the main focal point. So the stories are 75%, the teaching is 25%.
Absolutely see what you mean by this. Like this is resonating so much with me. And it's funny because like I then look to you and be like, I love how authentically you share because that's what I want to be able to do, right? So it's like I'm confident in the teaching space, but then that's not my edge, right? It's like if you stay in the confident spaces, you're never really actually going to expand and grow and learn. So I love that you shared it in that
Totally.
way. So it allows me to be like, okay, I can explore the storytelling more and the authenticity. And I love the practicality that you just brought to that. That was awesome. So thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
Oh my God,
This is my
yes.
own podcast. Like this is for me. So
Oh,
you have reinvented yourself in so many ways over the years, and I just love this about you, and I love the authenticity you bring to it. But then there's also this element of like we don't see a lot of the stuff behind the scenes. So you've reinvented from fitness right through to your podcast and personal development, right through to masterminds and events and your book, which I absolutely love. And now glossy, oh, sorry, light pink and then glossy. Like, oh my goodness, what an evolution of your business. I'd love to know, like, what have you now with where you're at glossy? And I want to talk about the pivot for a little bit. But like, there's this element there that I want to explore with you of like how you've drawn on your experience from all these other pieces and elements, from service-based businesses to fitness to performing to stage to speaking, like all of these things. How have you now brought that into Glossy?
Well, I what I've learned from being in so many different things is that there are components to like every kind of component in each thing that I was in transfers to the thing that I'm doing in some way. And so I think that if you look at fitness and what all went into fitness is the main thing that I learned from starting my fitness journey and having to create that actual physical transformation, but then also just the discipline that it took in order to get to that finish line of where I wanted to be and competing and getting on magazine covers and what that all looked like. There were so many things that I learned about discipline and about not seeing the result for years. And not for 4 years, but it felt that way, but literally for years physically. So I think what happened is that I got a great foundation of learning that results take so much time. And you can go and do the work and you'll actually be physically in pain. And you can do this for a year and you don't get that much of a change. And you can go back the second year and now you can start kind of like manipulating the food and dialing that in, and you can probably get a pretty decent change. But even then, if your body, like if you don't fully learn it and if there's ups and downs emotionally and if your mind's not right, you may still not see the change, even though your whole like muscular system has completely transformed underneath what you're not seeing. And so I think of this all the time with business people and new people that come in because we work in different levels. We have that mastermind now for 500K and above, and we're also going to actually launch a program in the future for 500K and below. And we've worked in these different ranges for quite a while, and you see different problems in these different ranges. And so for the 500K and below businesses, that's anywhere from usually like year 1 to year 5. What we see a lot is that people are poo-pooing the foundational things, the foundational actions. And I'm kind of like, when people are in year 2 or 3 and they're like, yeah, but I haven't made this much, or haven't seen this yet. I'm like, oh, honey, like it's because you are just like, you're literally laying the foundation and you're not even the person yet who could create this other business or handle it. Like you actually need to be in this year 1 to 3 for a little while and learn and do these things and learn how to do these foundational things and set your business up for success. Do the super unsexy things, the back end things, get everything down. And you're not going to even see anything sexy for a while because you're just literally learning how to do it. It's like, it's framing a home, right? It's like designing the home and then it's framing the home and then it's doing the electrical in the home and then it's doing the heating in the home, except all you want is to decorate, it's literally all we want. And so fitness was such a huge way for me to understand delayed gratification. Like, oh my God, one day you're going to all of a sudden see the whole, like once that framework is there on that home and everything is done, you know how fast it moves. Like once the drywall's up, it's like all of a sudden things are just popping and you have this beautiful home in what felt like maybe, 3 months after years of building. And so I really think of that in business. It's like, it is so important to go slow and to have that foundation, and fitness is what really taught me that. So then moving into the next businesses, what I really learned in, owning a gym and really starting on the business side of it and having, online memberships and also doing network marketing that was kind of all in a lump at the same time that I had started those. I would say that I learned about people and relationships. And in business, there are going to be so many things that frustrate you, that upset you, that are unfair. There's going to be people who literally steal people from you, steal money from you. They don't have an abundant mindset. There's going to be partnerships that crumble. This taught me so much about not burning bridges, about learning how to take a pause before I react, about looking at myself first as a leader before looking at my team or employees and blaming them or wishing that they could be different or not understanding why they can't get a job done. Um, and so I think all of these different components that I'm saying, like this is all in business. These are all super important pieces of business. And then I think throughout all of that too, something that was huge that I learned is the importance of constantly acquiring audience. And you're always selling. I think the biggest thing that you're selling is energy and hope. And that became a really big realization to me actually back in fitness when I wasn't the smartest trainer out there. I wasn't the most scientific trainer out there. I wasn't like decorated in degrees. In fact, I'd only done like the personal training certificate a couple different times, but I hadn't even graduated high school. And so for me, it always went back to this theme that you're hearing me say is like, oh, I'm not smart enough. I'm not valuable enough. So it made me learn how to focus on what I was good at. And it's funny because when I worked in a gym setting, there were so many trainers in this particular gym that I worked in, and I arguably the top trainer there who was always booked that people wanted to work with because I was always excited to see them. I learned that enthusiasm and energy is what they were paying for. They wanted me to be happy. They wanted me to carry the energy. They wanted me to be like excited about what they were doing. They wanted me to continually share my belief and pour into them of what I saw them as and what I believe they could do. And, they were coming there to feel good about themselves and to believe that their dream was possible of being fit or feeling good. And so when I really locked into that, I was like, okay, we're going to let go of all of my stupid beliefs about myself. And I'm going to show up and make people feel freaking amazing. And when people feel that way, it's astounding what they're capable of. So if you started looking at your business and said, where am I focusing so much on my lack and what I think I'm not doing and where I think I'm lacking as a, leader, as someone online, as an influencer, as whatever. And if I could really lean into how am I making other people feel when they contact me or when they come to my page? Like, am I making them believe it's possible? Am I just so energetically magnetic that people are like, oh my God, like I want what she's having. And I am not naturally like that. Like I actually have to prep myself to get that way. I can say now that I think my brain is now a lot more wired to be that way, but in the beginning it wasn't. I'm that girl that's like, I'll be driving and I'll be like, thinking doom thoughts. Like, oh my God, what if that wire like pops off there and comes and electrocutes my car? Like, is everyone in my family safe right now? Oh my God, I'm looking at that plane. I hope it stays up there. Like, that's not normal. Like that's okay. It is normal, but it took so much work to rewire that and be like, okay, I can't think this way because they're going to feel that. And I have to be the person that sells the energy and sells the hope. And so it was so much personal development work on then how do I get myself in that place of energy? And a lot of times it's like, I hate to even use this word, but it's like faking it. It's like choosing it at first. And the more that you choose it, the more your body and your brain and all of those things are going to follow. So I would say that throughout all of the different pivots, kind of learning those components that I just shared, like being very disciplined, showing up even when you don't freaking see results, because a lot of the time you're not going to see them. Really understanding how to work with people, keep your calm, like have an abundant mindset, let go, forgive, remove from your life toxic people. And then really know that what I'm selling throughout, like when I think about Glossy, even though I believe it's one of the most amazing products on the market, I am selling hope. I'm selling energy. I'm selling, something that's going to make them feel amazing. Something that when they look at the box, they feel connected to the brand or they feel a certain way or they identify with it. And I try to remember those things in whatever I'm doing, whether it's an event, whether it's a digital course, whether it's the podcast. Christine, when you turn your podcast on, you're not like right before it, like, yeah, can't freaking wait to talk again, even though I had this day and I had all these clients and I feel horrible. And I'm like, maybe you don't feel great about something. Maybe you're sick. I mean, I literally do 4 podcasts a week now. Do you know all the times that I'm on my period? I'm sick. I just had a fight with Chris. There's things going wrong. Stuff is going on in my family. Like, I get on and I'm like, okay, but how do I hype myself up to get my energy to a place where even if I just fake it for these 15 minutes and I'm not faking it, I'm like, learning to tap in to like compartmentalizing my life and tapping in for 15 minutes to like a place where I believe again, you know, and it like kind of hypes me up too. So I'm actually so grateful for the podcast, much like you probably are for yours, because it's like a therapy session. It forces you to learn how to deal with your emotions during times when you don't want to.
And that discipline is everything. And you're so right. Like I always feel so energized after I record a podcast. And I'm like, oh, and maybe I didn't feel as average as I thought I did beforehand. But you just sometimes just need to challenge yourself to show up and build that consistency. And I feel like that's what that commitment to the podcast for me was as well. Is like, no, no, you're going to do it every single week. And now I do 2 a week, because 4 a week sounds insane. That's a lot.
Worked my way up,
Yeah.
worked my way
Yeah,
up.
or maybe I'll get there one day. But yeah, like I totally agree with you. And I can absolutely attest to that energy and that hope that you bring to spaces, because I felt that from you every single event that I attended with you last year. And getting to
Mm,
spend that time with you and see the way that you show up and the way that you speak in front of crowds, but also speak to every single individual in the room and connect with them. It was such a beautiful, but it's so funny because like I flew from Australia all the way across to build my network. And I really want to talk to you about network and about how you've expanded your network and everything that you believe about this. And it was such an awareness for me, even after the first event, of like, oh, this is how you tap into a network. Like, this is actually how you do it well and
mm,
how you pour into people. And I recognized, and it was in that moment that in that first event that I was like, I'm not doing this in Australia. Like, I've flown all this way and I'm not doing this here. Like, why am I not doing that with my network here in Australia? And it made me change the way that I then do that here. And has made such a massive difference to my business this last year. Like, honestly, it was such a transformational year for me last year, from being to that first event and not feeling like I belonged. And I love how you speak about how you also seek these rooms out. So in the last event, you spoke about how like you challenge yourself, you and Chris also challenge yourself to be in those rooms where you're like, oh my God, I don't belong here. And I had that many times last year. Can you talk to us a little bit about why that's really important to you?
mm. Okay, I love this. And I also just want to acknowledge you because every time I would see you at those events, I'm like, okay, this girl, if I had to bet on anyone, I'm like, I would bet on her because of the amount of like risk and meaning you didn't need to fly across the ocean and take all of that time to come to. I know that's not comfortable to travel that far. Like most people don't love it. It's not comfortable to leave your life. It's not comfortable to go to another country where the culture is different, not crazy different, but different enough. It's not comfortable to like have to spend way more money than anyone else to go to an event. It's not, all of those things are not comfortable. Like you went way out of your way to go to that event. And I'm acknowledging it because there's a level of like the amount of discomfort that I believe you are willing to put yourself through and the amount of risk that you are willing to hold is how I believe you will be compensated. And so we're not compensated for our comfort. Think about it. I want you to think of all the times you're super comfortable and the decision is easy. How much good or how many ideas or how big of paychecks or how many connections have you gotten that have paid you?
Nothing, nothing.
Yeah. No, because it's comfortable. And so when you've taken a risk, though, we can look back to times where you've taken a risk, where it's been a really big risk. And even if you didn't directly get paid, I believe somehow that probably paid you in the future because you were able to take that lesson or something that you learned, or you took a bigger leap into something that ended up making you more money in the long run because you had a higher risk tolerance for being able to take that risk and that leap. And so risk is going to end up paying you. And the thing is that a lot of people are not going to be able to take that risk. Like thinking about, you know, the companies that Chris and I are doing right now. We both have startups with, you know, he's got a fintech app and I have a physical product. And these are riskier than an online product. These are riskier than a service-based product because there's more money that is put into them. There's more on the line. The orders, especially for a physical product, are a lot higher. The money that you pour in, you know, for my company too, I took on investors as well. So there's more risk with that. And so there's also a bigger possibility for a larger payoff. And so when you think of the level of risk that people are willing to hold, when you think of these people who hold investors when they raise 20 million, 50 million, 100 million, their tolerance for risk and the amount of pressure that they are holding is so much bigger. But the amount of the payoff that is possible is also much larger than we will ever experience. And so you have to remember whenever you're uncomfortable, that's why when I look at these rooms, going back to your initial question, the amount of risk that you're willing to take and discomfort of going into a room is also the amount of, blessing equally that you're going to get. So if you feel really, really uncomfortable and don't belong there, it's probably because there's multiple people in there who could change your life if you get uncomfortable and ask them for help. And if you don't feel uncomfortable in that room, that's because you're probably somewhere where nobody could actually get you to that next level of your life. And that's why it feels that way, is because you feel like there's a lot on the line when technically there's not. I mean, there's everything on the line. There's your future. But even if you totally screwed up in that room and you made yourself look like an idiot, which you can't really do, everybody feels like an idiot anyway and is only worried about what they're thinking in these rooms or how they're feeling. There's another room that you get to practice in. So that's how I look at these, networking rooms. Is the reason why they're so important is because there's someone in them, if you go to the right ones, there's someone in them who has done what you want to do and has your answers. That's why it makes you nervous.
And it shifts you on so many levels. Like I think sometimes you don't realize until, like for me, it was like there was these moments in the day on the days, but then there was months afterwards where you're like, oh, that's shifted for me because of the way I think now, because of that conversation that I had, or because I challenged myself in that way. But I must say, there is absolutely situations where you can put yourself in those rooms, but don't actually maximize it. So I'd love for you to share, like, how do you go into those rooms? Like, what's your intention? How do you choose to show up? How do you choose to utilize that room? Because sometimes you can like be in the room and be like, yeah, that was a waste of my time, but really that's your fault, not anyone else's, right?
Totally. Okay. Well, I've absolutely been in some rooms where I feel like here's the deal. You're going to be in some rooms where you are going to be the person who has the ability of bringing the value, meaning sometimes you go into a room and you think that you're going to get value out and you realize that it was your time and your turn to bring value to someone else. And you can't feel like that was a waste, because sometimes I've been in those rooms where I'm like, well, I didn't really get anything out of that, but did you walk into it with how can I help someone as well? And so looking back at the times when I thought I didn't get value in certain rooms, there were times where I got to bring the value to other people and help them. And then down the road, somehow that has either come back to me, or maybe it hasn't. Maybe it was just that I really got to be that valuable for that person. But I'm telling you, you do this long enough, you're going to start seeing the dots connect everywhere. And you're like, wow, I helped that girl who now has this amazing company. And now I'm literally standing on her stage and she just connected me to someone who could get me in this store, like that I want to be in to sell a product, or however that works. It's literally insane how connected we all are. Like the reason that we're in that room and why we chose it and that we're meeting is because we can't even see what's going to happen in the future. And so the problem with everybody who's not really valuing these networking rooms is that they are not playing the long game. And that's all business is you're not going to be successful at all if you want something upfront and you want it quick, because it doesn't matter if you were even successful in one business. It's not really going to make your next business that much faster. Like you are still going to have to put in that effort. And of course you have learnings and, you can hire faster and become a better leader. So there are faster components to it, but everything takes time. And so I would say when you go into the rooms to really maximize it, you have to go in saying, how can I help everyone that I meet? And then also know a couple questions that you want to ask. Like, what is the main thing that if you solved it, like if you got the answer in this room, what would that be? Now, sometimes I go in and I'm like, I'm super clear on that. I know what it's going to be. And sometimes I don't get that answer, but I get a bunch of other answers that maybe I needed from people. So I've absolutely heard that at our events. They're like, I went in with this and I really wanted to get this out of it, but instead I got these 3 things. And like, that's freaking amazing. And that's okay. I'll put this other thing on the back burner. Where people get stuck is when they don't get that one thing, even though they got the three that were just as valuable. And people can get so one track minded when the journey's not one track. It's like maybe you weren't even supposed to get that piece yet because, you know, the person that you want to hire isn't available for 6 more months. And like the universe doesn't want you to make a bad hire yet. So it's like you have to wait a little bit longer, take these three things and run with it. So always be clear on what you want out of the room, but stay open. So clear but detached. And then also, how can you add value in the room? Because I'm telling you, like, the amount of things that people have helped me with in Glossy, in events, in sharing my stuff is because they're like, you always have helped me. I'm more than happy when you reach out to say yes.
Yeah. And this is what I just absolutely love about what you and Chris bring to the events and the masterminds, because it's something that you instill in people and you attract those genuine people that do really want to see others win. And I just love that about the groups that you create. And but there isn't a practicality around it, because what you just shared there is like, it's that shift between like short-term focused of like, what can I get? You're like, how can I give? And how can I focus on it, be it long-term? So let's talk a little bit about the networking element, because like, if you're thinking about like, who do I need in my space? Who do I need to support me? And how do I get in those rooms? When you think about the network that you want to create, how do you go about, because I mean, I'm imagining at the stage of growth that you're in with your business and where you're at, like, they're big people that you want to connect with. They're not people that are just, hanging around, have the time.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you now go about making those reach outs and developing your network at the level you're at now?
So the first 10 to 15 years, I know that might seem a lot to some people. You don't have to take as long as I did, but it's just the first 10 to 15 years were more like I was getting in a lot of those rooms, like the rooms that we do. Now, because my asks are so specific with what I'm doing, it's more me reaching out specifically to people or asking friends who I think might have connections to people if they would ever be willing to connect to me. Now, those 10 to 15 years prior were so important because it set me up with a reputation of somebody who these people would be willing to help. Like, I'm someone who follows through. I'm somebody who takes action. I'm somebody who a lot of people know, and I've got I've got a good reputation. And so it's kind of like you need to go put yourself in those like bigger rooms of more diverse people and businesses and like really put yourself out there. But then once you start really understanding in your business, like exactly what you need, I have less needs where I walk into a room and I'm like, I don't know where to start. I have 10 things that I need. Now I'm like, I need one thing this quarter, I need an ads person for my CPG product, my consumer packaged goods product, or I need someone, for example, let's just say, and I don't need this person right now, but like, do you have a good SEO person? Like, I want to, come up when you Google Glossy, I want to be at the top of the page. Like, my needs are very specific now for this point in my journey. So I'm more like reaching out to people, asking friends, or some other things that I'm doing is I really want to be around women who are at a higher level than me, like at the next level. So I'm specifically reaching out to them and working to put like groups together or dinners together, or asking myself first. I'm like, okay, this is the hardest question to ask yourself. Like, how do I add value to someone who is ahead of me? This is a really, really tough question because you can't always do that. And so, I really look at it and go, okay, like, do they have a book coming out? Do they maybe want to connect with other high level women? Could I be the person to take the brunt of the work, put a really beautiful dinner together? Do I have some extra money that I could maybe even pay for this dinner so that it makes the ask easier? Hey, I rented a back room at this restaurant. I've put together, these women that have already said yes. I would love to just facilitate a beautiful evening where we can all just share one thing that we need, and just enjoy each other for the night. Like, would you be interested in coming? Now, That's scary on so many levels for so many reasons. Like, just who in the world is going to be the first person to say yes? Like, are people going to say yes? Are they going to say no? You're going to get a lot of rejection. You're going to get a lot of unanswered messages. You're going to get a lot of unanswered emails. And sometimes maybe you can't go up to that tier yet. Maybe you're not ready for that. Maybe your career, you haven't done something big enough to get attention for that yet. There was a time in my career where I tried this early and I got crickets back. It did not happen. The women did not, they weren't interested. I can't blame them. But you literally have to keep on trying. And sometimes it takes one person who tips the domino and you can kind of name drop them and like let it ask if that's okay. Hey, can I say that you're coming to this dinner, like on this invite or whatever that looks like? And, to some people that might be like, oh, well, that's shitty. Like, people have to see who's coming to the dinner first. Yes, they have to protect their energy. They have worked really, really hard. What if people are coming to this dinner and instead of it being something that's, valuable and soul filling for them and gives them answers, that all of a sudden they show up and they're coaching for 4 hours in the corner with somebody who's not emotionally ready yet to be in a situation like that. And they take. And now your name is associated with that. And so I think it's really important to just take all of those things into consideration, that if you're getting no's over and over with something like that, it might be that you need to start just a little bit of a level down and start putting those dinners together. Because what can happen is, I started doing things like that and putting those types of things together. And people were like, wow, I love that you do that. That's so awesome. Like, I don't do that in my life. And it looks so amazing and so fun. And I'm like, well, I'll put one together. Like, great, So I think that there's reasons for everything. And the second that we start to feel bad for ourselves, or I'm not good enough, or they don't like me, or I'm getting excluded, that is on you. I did those things for years and all it did was hurt me. And all it does is waste time. It's like, you have to, in Heart of, Mel Robbins' book right now, like, you have to let them say no to you. You have to let it be okay if you feel excluded. You have to let all of that be okay. And you have to just keep finding the people who are going to say yes.
100%. And I absolutely love that you shared that, because I feel like that was a big lesson for me to learn, but also I hear this a lot as well. Like, we see others on social media and we see like the incredible group of women that you connect with and you go on retreats with and you hang out with, and we look to that and it's like, oh, I really want that for myself. But rather than actually thinking like at that level, like, you can actually create that. And I think that was a huge lesson that I had with attending the events last year, is like, well, how have I cultivated that here in Australia? And then I actually went about doing that, and it's changed so much for me here in Australia. And it's just been like so much more inspiring, because I'm sure I've heard that you share this before, like, when you're working and you're growing and you're leveling up and you're challenging yourself to get in rooms like this and to grow and to expand and put yourself out there, your friendships start to change. And so for me last year, I went through a period of time where I had a few friends drop away, and that was really painful. And then also went actively to be like, how can I start investing in my circle? How can I start to actually build new relationships? And your book, A Tribe Called Bliss, was so helpful for that, to be able to support me in being able to be like, how do I make those reach outs and how do I make those connections? How do I support people? And it's allowed me to be able to really make really great friendships now with people that I look up to, that I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe they even responded to my DM like that. But again, I learned from you in the way that's like, don't give up. Don't just send one message and then just get disheartened or get rejected. Like, stay invested and keep adding value, and stop thinking it's the short game and start focusing on the long game. But I also would love to know, there's two elements here I'm kind of like wanting to explore with you. One, how do you know where your energy is best spent? Because I know that sometimes we can get caught up in all the things and doing like all the people that we really want to connect with to build your network. And you might be giving a lot. How do you know when it's time to actually go, well, hang on a minute, I'm going to pause here, but then go over here?
So the giving a lot part, this is important because people are probably like, oh, she's walking into rooms going, how can I help you? How can I help you? I don't necessarily offer that help. Number one, if I can't help, and if it's not something that feels easy for me to do, and there's going to be a lot of things that feel easy for you to do. If it's like something that's going to start taking away from your business, and this person, maybe you don't know them or whatever, maybe you don't see a future with this person, then you get to decide if that's a no, or you don't offer help. Meaning, like, if they have an ask and you can't help them, then you don't offer it. Like, that's perfectly fine to have boundaries. You can't walk into these rooms and come back with 20 things that you have to deliver on. I'm really, really clear on kind of like, oh, I want to help this person because number one, maybe I was really drawn to them. Maybe it was just the energy thing. I was like, you know what? I can tell this is a great person. I can tell this person has an amazing future, which like for you, when I met you, immediately I was like, oh, okay, she has invested in the time and what it took to come here. I will invest back in her if she asks me for something, because I love her energy and she has shown up and invested multiple times. So that was like, that's an easy, like, that's just an example of like, that feels easy for me when someone shows up for themselves. I'm like, yes, I love knowing that what I help you with is going to be helpful. The people who don't and who are like, oh, I didn't come to the second and the third. This is just examples. Like, so people, it's very tangible. I didn't come to the second and third event because, it was across town. I'm like, across town, she came from Australia. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, but maybe they're reaching out for help, but I can tell that they don't even really want to show up for things or whatever that looks like. I'm kind of like, okay, well, I'm probably not going to show up for you because I know this is going to be a waste of my time. So first of all, figuring out how you want to show up for people. So number one is like, do they match the energy? Do they show up for themselves? Then another one is this somebody who I can see us either having a partnership with in the future, or who could be mutually beneficial for me? So is this somebody who's really great at growing brands? Like maybe I'm not as good at like certain things in my company, and I'm like, oh, this could be awesome later with zero expectation. I don't think this person has to help me in any way, but it's always good to build up those favors with somebody who potentially could help you or introduce you to somebody else. So that maybe in the future, if I asked for something, even if they say no, this is one of the most important things that I think we could say on this podcast is like, if you get butt hurt over people saying no to you, it's literally going to keep you stuck. And people feel it when people ask me with an expectation of me helping them, or like like offer me help with needing, like that needy energy of wanting something in return. I can feel it and I will say no to you. So it's like I can now feel that energy. I've had it in my life enough where I'm like, nope, we're going to stay out of here because I'm literally going to be a walking disappointment for you. Like we're just a ticking time bomb of disappointment, because I'm not going to be able to fulfill your expectations if you ask me with this needy energy. I'll never be enough. I'll never be able to fulfill enough. So people who even could help you might stay away from you. So I think that going into something without having an expectation on it, and also going into these rooms and knowing, like, set a number, be like, okay, I can help 3 or 5 people today. That's all. And I'm going to put it in my notes, and I'm going to follow up, and I'm going to try to make sure that I get these things done within the day or like the next day of the event. So something that's really important is when you go to a networking event, schedule one day after. Like it's a hack. It's an absolute hack, you guys. Schedule one day after where you're going to schedule the things that you learned and that you said that you would do, but you're also going to do the things in the intros for the people that you said that you would do them for. So keep notes on your phone or keep notes in a notebook. And so then you never feel bad, and then you never waste an event, because so many people come back to events the next year and go, oh God, I didn't do any of the stuff. So it actually became a waste for them.
Ooh, absolute hack there. 100% agree with you. And even like staying an extra day, I found like the last time when I was in Laguna, actually even in Beverly Hills, I stayed extra days afterwards, and being at the hotel, and then also like having those connections, then follow up the next day, and like booking coffees the next day just to catch up and have further conversations. Because sometimes when you're at events, you have like a 3-5 minute conversation, and there's only so much that you can do in that amount of time. So I found that was super helpful. The next day after Laguna, I spent the whole day in the lobby bar just chatting with people coming through the lobby. It was honestly the best. I was like, this is honestly felt like a second day of the event.
Oh, for sure. And it for sure was, like, because you utilized it that way.
Yeah. So then how do you go about then nurturing those relationships over time? So let's say you've met someone at an amazing event and you're like, yeah, sometime in the future, this could be really beneficial to stay connected. How do you do that? And also how do you like allocate time for that? Because I'm imagining you're super busy.
So you're not going to be able to stay connected to everyone, and people are going to understand that sometimes a one time a year drop in is going to be a connection. Chris and I have so many friends that we would consider like they're definitely friends. They're not like great friends or besties or whatever, but we maybe see them once a year or talk to them once a year, but we would do anything for them. Like I'm thinking of quite a few people right now where we just know, like, if we have a book out or they have a book coming out, like we're going to help each other. And I think that that is like, those are those natural, like, almost like those reciprocity relationships. They are very much like, hey, I'm going to be here for you whenever you have something. And you just kind of create that by doing something for them and being like, letting them know, hey, whatever you need, let me know, I'm here. And a lot of times what people say is same with you. If you have if you see me, podcasting with a guest that you want a connection to, like, just let me know. Like, you start doing those favors for people. Now, some of those relationships you're going to feel like you're not as drawn to, but business wise, they feel amazing. You have mutual respect for each other. You cheer each other online. Maybe you reach out in the DMs and you say, like, hey, I saw you have this. Is there anything I can do or share? You just kind of have those people top of mind. And those are like kind of the outskirts. Then there's going to be a group of people that you literally need to make a list on your phone who you want to invest in. The list isn't going to be long. It's like 2 to 5 people. Sometimes you can maybe put 10 on there if you want to like stay kind of in touch. And, we shared this at dinner series that one of our mentors, Brendan Bouchard, does something called Follow Up Fridays. Or Finisher Fridays, sorry. And so every Friday for an hour, he goes and looks at that list of his 10 or however many people he has on there, and he checks in with them via text. What are you up to? How is your week? How can I help you? Anything I can help you with? And so this is the way that he keeps those relationships like super nurtured. And so you can start with 2 people. You can start with 3 people. If there's somebody that you don't have to do it every week. You could do a monthly check-in. This could be an email. This could be a DM. This can be a voice note. But for my girlfriend relationships, I'm a voice noter. I probably voice note my girlfriends, at least once every 2 weeks, if not more frequently than that. So they're just always in my head. And I'm like, oh, I haven't given a voice note lately. And that's how I stay in touch with all of them.
I love that. I love that so much. And when I heard Brendan share that, I was like, oh my God, even at his level, he's doing this, he's dedicating this time to nurture those relationships. And that just blew my mind. And it just changed the way that I thought about your network, but also like your friendships, because sometimes you can get super busy and involved in your business and then be like, what about my actual friendships?
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's so important.
My goodness. So I could talk to you for hours. We could do like 20,000
Same.
podcasts. And I know that I really want to be respectful of your time. So just to wrap things up, I'd love to know what's one piece of advice you would give a business owner who would like to take their business to the next level?
I mean, you're gonna know my advice. You probably already do. You need to get in the room with people who have already done it, because it's going to accelerate everything that you are doing. Like all of the little places you're getting stuck, all of the questions that you have, all of the mistakes you're about to make. You get to bounce those off people. And instead of spending, I want you to think about it like this, instead of spending that next quarter or that half a year, investing your time, investing your team, investing your money, and investing your mental bandwidth into an idea that somebody just did that didn't work, and now they're on to an idea that does. Think of how much time and money that saves you when you just get to talk to people and cut that out. So that has been huge. It's been huge. And if you don't get in the room like an advisor of some sort, I literally just hired an advisor who's done exactly what I'm doing. And the amount of time, money, and just the peace of mind that I have now to bounce things off of this person is life-changing. It's everything.
I can't even imagine like this, the pivot as well from like service-based businesses and fitness and then to Glossy, like a product-based business. The learning curve would have been massive. So having that network would have been next level.
Ugh. Yeah, and I didn't have the network at first, and I made a lot of mistakes, and I lost a lot of money, and I think product companies are a little different. There wasn't as many like masterminds or people that I knew yet in that space, and now that I have them, I'm like, oh my God, we just need more.
Yeah, love it.
People just need more. Hmm.
Thank you so much. I honestly appreciate everything that you shared here today and how you've supported me over the years. It's been such a joy to spend this time with you. And thank you for sharing so authentically over the years. It's made such a massive impact on so many people's lives. And I really appreciate and just want to acknowledge you in that.
Well, I'm so grateful for you. I think you are such a light and a magnet and an energy, like, just you literally emit so much energy. And I'm so excited for all that you're doing. And I'm so grateful you had me on the podcast. I truly could talk for like 4 more hours with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, and if you found any value out of this episode, make sure you hit the follow button so you get access to the episodes as soon as they are live, and make sure you come hang out with me on Instagram. You can find me at ChristineCorcoran_coach. Have an incredible week.